behind time, so if everybody would please take their seats. The first item on the agenda are if there's any bill introductions. And I have a bill introduction. The RS number is 23 RS 0919 and is in regards to farmland leases. So that's the bill introduction. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Helgerson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Bill is introduced. Any further bill introductions this morning? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to the items on the agenda. First, we're going to have a briefing on the Economic Development Initiative Fund, also known as EDIF. And so I would invite Rachel Willis, the Director of Legislative Affairs with the Kansas Department of Commerce. Welcome to committee, Rachel.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. I am Rachel Willis, Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Commerce. Before I go into an explanation regarding our enhancements, I just wanted to share some of our significant developments that have really positioned the Department of Commerce as a national leader in economic and community development. So as I'm sure you remember, and thanks to all of your help, the Apex bill was passed in record time last session, and it enhanced the state's competitive position on mega projects over $1 billion in capital investment. This was signed in February of 2022, and then the state was able to attract the $4 billion Panasonic project, which was announced later that summer on July 13th. So overall, in 2022, the state has had $7.4 billion in capital investment, which half of that was made possible through foreign direct investment to the state. Also notably, we opened the Office of Registered Apprenticeship, so that was established within our department. The International Division also teamed up with some partners, the Greater Wichita Partnership, to provide a state trade show expansion program, STEP, and supported the booth at that Farborough Air Show, which hadn't happened in a couple of years, of course, due to COVID. The Creative Arts Industry Commission was able to help 13 murals be completed across the state, and 16 of those were awarded funding last year also. We saw the successful creation of the Historic Economic Asset Line, or HEAL grant program, in late 21. 32 awards were distributed then in the spring of 22. The Office of Rural Prosperity and the Community Development Division in Commerce partnered with the Patterson Family Foundation to offer another year of grants to really revitalize those downtown buildings. The Office of Rural Prosperity continues to work hard on increasing capacity for our rural communities. And they piloted a program called Rural by Choice, and it's the Champion Program. And so the program funded 12 individual champions that are working collaboratively to address those critical challenges in their particular communities and regions. And then lastly, the Office of Broadband Development was one of the first 8 states in the country approved for funding under the ARPA capital funds, capital project funds for broadband infrastructure. So this program provided $83.5 million in funding to strengthen and improve our broadband infrastructure program throughout the state. So in July, the Office of Broadband launched that competitive grant program and distributed funds. They received 141 applications totaling nearly $600 million in requests. So based on the department's continued success, we're experiencing increased demand for our programs and to continue providing those services to empower Kansas businesses, communities, and individuals. We're seeking 9 budget enhancements. So the first budget enhancement is for a workforce marketing campaign. This request is $3 million. It's to create a dynamic marketing campaign that would focus on recruiting Kansans back home and really slowing that outward migration of our population. So we think that this is just one strategy, again, to help us with that workforce shortage that we're all talking about. The next is Kansas Tourism, and this is a $2.2 million request. This is for a marketing campaign and the Attraction Development Grant Program. So Kansas Tourism would like to create a marketing campaign and then fund that attraction development grant program. So the tourism program continues to rank as one of the lowest in the states in terms of funding for state tourism. And additionally, those marketing dollars would allow them to expand their promotional efforts into new markets, increase visibility, and just allow for greater advertising frequency. Currently with the grant program, it is a matching grant program, and we just use the operating dollars there from tourism to pull that off. So there is no dedicated funding for this grant program. So we would like to create dedicated funding for the grant program. Next up is the international division. This is a $1.2 million request, and this would really resurrect that international division. So these funds would be used to hire both additional staff and consultants that would help us with travel and really promoting trade missions and work like that. The research division, we would like $279,500 to create a research division within the Department of Commerce. This would allow us to have 2 additional positions, and it would really help us better track some of our data and help us fulfill those data requests that we receive. Last year, thankfully, we're very grateful for the enhancement that we received for registered apprenticeships, but we would like to continue that, so we're requesting another $500,000 for this. And again, we just see that apprenticeships can really play an important role in helping Kansas employers and communities bridge that gap between employment and education. Okay, so then within the Office of Rural Prosperity, this enhancement request is for $2.3 million, and it would fund 4 important programs. So the first would be the HEAL, so the Historic Economic Asset Lifeline, which is $1.5 million. And again, this funding would be flexible funding to provide assistance to address gaps in the costs of downtown building improvements. We would leverage state dollars to pursue potential philanthropic partners to help match these funds. And again, just really increase the availability of funding for rural communities and those historic downtown buildings. Next, similar to HEAL would be an emergency HEAL enhancement. This is for $500,000. And this would really help save those buildings that are at high risk due to some sort of emergency, right? Whether that's a fire or heavy rain or snow or a windstorm, just to make sure that, again, we can help those small communities protect their downtown buildings. I'd like to also request an enhancement for the Rural Champions, $150,000. This would not only allow the initiative to grow, but really support those small town communities and hopefully continue that collaborative approach so that all folks are working together to find ways to improve our rural communities across the state. The last one within the Office of Rural Prosperity Enhancement request is for the Murals and the Public Art Initiative, and it's $150,000. This would provide additional funding to grow the number of murals in our rural communities. It would support the creation of at least 20 additional murals. This, again, is a matching kind of grant opportunity. Okay, we are requesting an enhancement of $500,000 for Salesforce development. Currently, the agency uses Salesforce. It's a software platform for our grant management, our economic development projects, our contact list management, our incentive programs, our application portals, just everything across the agency. And of course, like all software, it always needs an update. So looking to go ahead and do that update, as well as hire 2 more positions. Specifically, one would be a marketing cloud administrator, and the second position would be a Salesforce developer. Also requesting a $500,000 enhancement for the Kansas Creative Arts industry. Again, our Kansas Creative Arts Industry Commission remains one of the lowest ranked state arts organizations across the country. Specifically, we're 47th. So this increase would just allow us to expand activities within that creative arts sector. Then lastly, we are seeking an enhancement of $1 million to support childcare. So as we continue to work with businesses across the state and recruit new businesses and help businesses expand, childcare remains at the top of the list of their concerns. So we would like to work with these employers and communities to ensure that that early child care services are available for their employees and communities. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Rachel.
Yes.
Actually, I do have a few questions because I've been analyzing the governor's budget and actually specifically looked at the Economic Development Initiatives Fund and have some questions in regards to the increases. So let's first start with the international division. So there was a proposal to establish a Kansas-Japan office due to Panasonic and Kubota in your comments, and then also to have a lead generation initiative in Europe. Have we had this in the past, is my first question, and then next is what do we plan on getting back from the dollars that if we establish an office in Japan and in Europe?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, to my understanding, we have had such a relationship in foreign countries in the past, but due to budget constraints and different priorities across the years, that was eliminated. I think we probably regret using the word office because right now we are primarily wanting to focus on hiring a consultant. We think that this would lead to efficiencies, right? So cut down obviously on travel time, but also allow that person, that consultant who would be located in those countries to be operating on those same time zones, be well versed in their culture. And we know specifically with Japan, relationships and that just kind of that one-on-one, like building that trust and good understanding of what's being asked is really, really important to them. And so that's what's our focus with that enhancement.
So with an increase of 1.2 million in international trade, according to the EDIF, how many consultants are we looking at hiring?
So we would hire 2 additional staff here within the Department of Commerce, and then I think just 1 over there, but it would also support all of the other kind of resources and capacity and just general operating expenses as our international office really starts to engage in conversations.
Okay. Moving on to the Emergency Heal Year-Round program of $500,000. What are the parameters or the criteria if there is an emergency, whether it be by flooding, wind, snow, hail, whatever, tornado, whatever the case may be? What are the parameters if a community wants to apply for that, and what is the selection process?
That's a really good question. I don't know those details. I can follow up with you or the committee overall.
Well, and the reason why I ask that is because we've been having discussions in regards to the governor's wildfire task force. And we've been talking in that task force about creating a contingency fund if there is a disaster. And so I'm wondering if this is going to be in competition with that. And obviously, if something happened, communities could access that fund as well if we were to establish that fund in the budget. So going on then to the Rural Champions and the Murals and Public Art Initiative, what is the definition of rural as far as population?
Also a good question. I don't know that one specifically. Let me find out.
Okay, that sounds good. And then going on to the Kansas Creative Arts Industry Commission, I know there's been an initiative in the last few months, or not months, but years, and then actually when we put more money into the Kansas Creative Arts in trying to attract television or motion picture studios to actually have movies produced in the state of Kansas. Is that part of this as well?
No, so that's a separate initiative, and we actually have the film tax credit bill, so Senate Bill 91. It actually has a hearing later today, 10:30. So that's a different initiative. So in that particular bill, there are obviously tax credits, but then also two different funds, one fund for education and then a second for workforce development, each at $1 million to provide grants and supports to really hopefully create a robust kind of 360 approach to film and media production in the state.
All right, thank you. And the final question I have is in regards to the $1 million enhancement with childcare. How is that in conjunction with some of the money that was approved, and maybe Representative Williams will be able to shine some light on this, but that we approved with Spark money?
Yeah, so that Spark funding is that bucket, right? I think it's $38 million, and that is being administered by a different agency, so not the Department of Commerce. This request would be specific for us as we work with businesses as we are recruiting them or helping them expand to also help them think out their plan for childcare services in that particular community. So recently, there's been 2 projects that we've been able to help them think about that and what that looks like as far as their investment in the community, right? Whether it's related to capital investment in space or taking advantage of some of those tax credits that you all expanded last year. So just again, making sure that we have the resources available and are helping them to the fullest.
All right, thank you. Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the questions I have for you, do you know how many FTEs you might have that are open and unfilled?
Currently we have 36.
And then when we get over here to the workforce marketing campaign, can you kind of shed some light on how you're going to enhance business here with that $3 million?
Yeah, so this one might be one of my favorite enhancements. And so this is really looking at creating a very unique campaign in the sense that we want to work with all stakeholders across the state at a very granular level, at a really local level. And we want to help them, one, overall create kind of a similar message for the state. So as everybody works together to bring people back and to stop this outward migration, we hope that we all have a consistent message. But we know that some of these local stakeholders who actually might have the best bet at getting someone back, right? Because they have that personal relationship or they watched them grow up as a kid. We want to arm them with the tools, whether that's some sort of a postcard design or the postcard or whatever they need to help them deliver that message to come back to Kansas.
I hear that. I'm a little more. I'm great for that, but I'm kind of concerned about a campaign to keep local businesses here in Kansas. So this state is. You may not agree to this, but it's not a very tax-friendly state to have a business in. So if you could think of something you'd like to add for another initiative, it'd be great.
Representative Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here this morning. On page 6, bullet point number 4, the public art initiative and the murals. In FY23, you guys gave out $93,000 in grants. What was allocated for that year?
Rachel.
Sorry, I have too many papers up here. Let me see if I can find. I don't have the specific dollar amount allocated to the mural initiative. I can tell you that it was a collaborative philanthropic partnership with a nonprofit here in Kansas to help us support those dollars. And then those grants did require a match.
Okay. Which I have, but I'm looking at, you guys are asking for $150,000, and I'm wondering, did we give $150,000 to you guys last year? Did you guys find money from somewhere else?
Rachel.
Yes, so I don't think it was a specific, I know it wasn't a specific allocation, like a line item like it's being presented today. So it came from within operating.
Okay, thank you. That's the information I was looking for.
Yeah.
May I ask another question?
Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you characterize the nature of our outreach to Taiwan, who's one of our largest trading partners? Do we have an active presence there with respect to fostering that? I know they were here last summer with a large trade delegation, and Lieutenant Governor signed a rather large trade agreement with them. But do we have someone there full-time promoting our interest in this, in our Kansas interest there?
Rachel?
Yeah, no, we don't have anyone located in Taiwan, but we do, yes, that has been a top priority. That relationship and that work around that has been a top priority for our international division. So I can get you more information. Jeff Willis, our director, is very passionate about our work with that country, so he can fill you in on all of the details.
Are there any further questions for Rachel in regards to EDIF? Again, Representative Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rachel, in your performance-based measurements, is there a metric for each one of these items that defines what success is?
Yes.
Okay. Could you get me a copy of that, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other further questions for Rachel? Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In here, in this new, in these enhancements anyway, you're targeting to bring people back to Kansas that used to live here and have left. One of our biggest concerns has been over the last several years the fact that more than half our students leave after they graduate. What are you doing to stop that so that we don't have to have a marketing campaign to get them back?
Yeah, so great point, and I probably didn't explain it very well. So yes, we know that we can't just do a marketing campaign when there is that problem here, that very real problem, right? Because then we will always need a marketing campaign to bring folks back. So we are working with higher education and the different folks to make sure that our students understand the opportunities that are right here in our state and all the great new job opportunities specifically.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On child care, you're asking for a $1 million enhancement. How much money is being spent right now for the child care issue,
Rachel.
other than the $1 million?
So, so we've got a couple different grant opportunities, right? So like community development block grants, there's a portion of that can be used for childcare funding. The seed grants, there was a category there specific to childcare. I don't have a total dollar amount.
Representative Tarwater.
On child care, I think the governor spent close to $100 million on child care during the pandemic. How many slots did that open?
Rachel.
Yeah, sorry. I think you're referring to those bonuses that were awarded, or
That's
just
exactly what I'm referring to. There was $100 million spent, and it was spent on bonuses for current child care facilities, and didn't open a single child care facility, other than it made it very difficult for other child care facilities to compete because they couldn't pay what these other ones that were already there getting paid. And so what is the plan to open more child care facilities rather than just shut out competition?
Rachel.
Yeah, so we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we're having those conversations with businesses as they're thinking about expanding, and we're recruiting them to the state. And hopefully we're connecting them to the existing resources that are there. But as far as opening childcare centers, I think that that's going to take a collaborative approach across agencies and communities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rachel, I think I asked you this in our budget meeting, but do you have those population numbers, the out-migration numbers? Because I've heard several things around the building people using numbers that are very different?
Yeah, yep. So we did a little bit of research for you specifically, and I sent you a document that outlined that and a good summary. So I can share that with the committee so that everybody understands where we're coming from when we talk about outward migration.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rachel, thank you for the presentation. My question is regarding the child care initiative. Would that be helpful? And one question that I've been asking all summer and in search of is businesses that have taken advantage of the business child care tax credit that we expanded last year. And I have not really been able to find that, but I think the gap is in, we passed that, but nobody was given the responsibility to go out and educate businesses and to tell them that that was available. So is that an example of what perhaps this initiative would do?
Rachel.
Yes, thank you. It is, absolutely. And we have seen, since all of your hard work to expand that and pass that, we have received more questions specifically, and there is a gap in understanding of what that credit can be used for. So it's not just about establishing your own child care facilities. There's also the opportunity to help your employees find child care in the community or at a different service or facility. So yes, we're working hard, and this would absolutely help that.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems like child care is getting a lot of attention this morning. One of the aspects of looking at this that I think was a missing component was that this would allow employers and communities to work more with early child care services. We have a shortage in just child care in general, but we have a crucial shortage in terms of early childhood, because the younger they are, you need more caretakers of them. If we use infant as an example, it's 1 to 4 match. And then with toddlers, you can go up to a certain number. But with more communities maybe doing more early child care, not just babysitting services, but developing as they go along. That's what I'm reading here for you beyond providing. And this will be by providing additional support to new development of projects that specifically build in plans of providing these services to the workforce. Mm-hmm. Can you expand on that? Because that's an area that I attended this summer, and child care also did it in Colorado, that's where the crucial area is for most women, especially returning back to the workforce.
Rachel.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that is a good point to make. And I think we were missing that word as far as early childhood, right? So we're talking about those little ones that aren't old enough to go to school yet. And I think it gets even more challenging when we think about, for example, Panasonic, right? And that mega project and that construction phase where those crews will be out there and operating almost 24 hours a day. And so how do we help find facilities and services for those little ones when one of their caregivers may be working overnight? So, yes. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Rachel.
Representative Helgerson.
I apologize, but now you got me interested in this. Is this just basically $1 million that we're going to be giving every year for the department to subsidize childcare for a business coming in or people coming in?
Rachel.
I can't speak to how long or if this would be ongoing. I know that this is our request this year.
Okay, so we don't know if this is the first of many years that we're going to start a new child care program, or whether or not this is just a targeted that we'd use it 1 year and then the money would come back. And okay, thank you.
Representative Corbett.
Can you kind of tell me where Kansas ranks, for outward migration compared to the other states and how it's compared to our surrounding states? Are we still in the top 10?
Rachel.
Yeah, good question, and I don't want to misspeak. And so we just put a good group of information together for Representative Carlin. So let me send that to you so I nail that and get it exact. But yeah, our overall rating or ranking has not changed. or at least not significantly. So
You know what that was?
I don't.
You'll get back with me. Get it back.
Yeah.
Any further questions for Rachel? I guess I have a couple of questions that I've generated since we've been talking. So out of all the funds that we have in EDIF, is there a balance remaining with all the enhancements?
Out of the total EDIF, so Commerce isn't the only agency that's
Correct,
funded
yeah,
out of
right.
there, but no, there will not. FY23, there was, so typically we make a transfer back to state general funds. That transfer did not occur, and there will not be one in FY24.
So
Based on these
all of the
enhancements.
lottery transfers into the EDIF is being utilized under the governor's request? Okay.
Yes.
And then I want to circle back to tourism. And I know when I was an intern back in the late 90s for the state senate, don't hold that against me, but Kansas actually ranked 50th in regards to tourism. And that's when Governor Graves then had the initiative with the Speedway in Kansas City, Kansas, and that kind of helped the state of Kansas in regards to tourism. And I have to say, I mean, my wife she lived in Wichita for many years. And when we had the CSG Midwest meeting in Wichita, we went to the Sedgwick County Zoo, we went to the Botanical Gardens, and there were areas of Wichita that I have never experienced in my entire life. And so I think we need to promote some of the attributes that we have in the state of Kansas, and I think we have fallen short because we do have across the state many different things. I mean, like last year, I brought up the Walter P. Chrysler Museum that's in Ellis, and how I think we need to enhance the promotion of that, because we had an individual who was born and raised in the state of Kansas and became one of the big three automakers in the world, and yet we don't promote it. And so I guess in regards to the tourism campaign, what is the initiative behind that to try to generate tourism in the state of Kansas?
Yeah, so the tourism does really fantastic work, and I hope that maybe even on social media just this last week you were able to see some of their work that they've done, specifically around Kansas Days. So they released, I think, 4 different videos related to Kansas Days and Home on the Range, and had different artists from Kansas performing those. And so it's things like that that we're doing. It's just that. Obviously, with these marketing dollars, it goes really, really quickly, right? If you're talking about print or television or even social media these days, it doesn't take much and your budget is spent. So just looking to enhance that so we can further promote all these wonderful things in Kansas.
Well, I'm kind of glad you mentioned the Home on the Range, because actually that song was created in my district in Smith County. And obviously is known worldwide. And there was a short film that was made about Home on the Range that we actually had a premiere here in the Capitol. Also, that director of Home on the Range is working on another project with Sod and Stubble, which was a book that was written about a family in Osborne County. And so I'm going to be a little biased because both of those are in my district. But a promotional effort, and in a little bit, in promoting the history and the heritage of Kansas, and that's what this particular director is doing. My next question is, are the dollars that we're going to be using for tourism in any way going to be trying to attract some type of an attraction to the state of Kansas? And most likely that'd be moving into our higher metropolitan areas of Kansas City and Wichita.
Good question. Not to my knowledge. These are really focused on promoting the state as a whole and as a place to come and visit. We do know that every resident, right, that doesn't have a connection to Kansas is a visitor first. So there's connections there, but not that I'm aware of as far as these dollars being spent to help incentivize or bring an attraction here. No.
Okay.
I think we have other tools for that.
All right, thank you. We do have another question. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I look at all of the different updates that you provided on the EDF fund, and I'm thinking about commerce in a little bit bigger picture than just the EDIF, but it was prompted by the representative from Shawnee County's question about net migration. So I just pulled it up, and net migration in Kansas is, out of the last 13 years, 11 years have been in the negative. I mean, thousands. Some years we've lost 12,000 people migrated. Now our population stabilized because of births and deaths and those types of things, but the migration are those that are choosing to exit. So my question is, with all the commerce programs that we have, all the incentives that we have, is there any way to factor in all the new created jobs of Kansas from commerce every year? What is that compared to the net migration?
Rachel?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me see if we can do some analysis on that and see if there's trend lines or what might exist there.
So what that might look like, Chairman, is if you could provide us the total number of jobs created through incentive packages each year. Let's say you could go for 5 years, compare it to the net migration of Kansans exiting. Does that even add up? That might be a good place to start to see if, and the other question we often talk about in terms of incentives, is it causing other existing businesses to not be competitive? So therefore, they're losing their employees to ones that may be incentivized higher and able to pay higher, or are they having to exit the state for other opportunities elsewhere? So I guess the bottom line are some of these great things we're trying to do causing more harm than good? But if you could give us that information, that'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For the 12th time, Representative Corbett.
I'd like to promote Shawnee County for just a little bit. No, I don't. Anyway, as the chairman was speaking about tourism, the reason tourism is on death row is it's not even $1 a person for the people who live here. And I think there's two suggestions: either double their money, which would be about 5.2, and I would suggest taking that $1 million for TV and getting it in there, because as I've told many people, Oklahoma has a show every week called Discover Oklahoma. It's on an NBC station, and it lets their tourism people showcase all of Kansas. And right now, most people don't even know what's available here. But when you have a budget so low, you can't do much. So I'd suggest that. It may not fly, but you've got to do something with it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions for Rachel in regards to EDIF? Representative Curtis.
Thank you for allowing me an additional time, Mr. Chairman. So just to continue the theme on tourism, I just want to make sure that we're preparing, because we have some really good opportunities that are coming forward. So in a few years, we will be celebrating the U.S. 250th celebration, the semi-quincentennial, and then also that very same year, we will be hosting in Kansas City will be one of the host cities for the World Cup. So that's just going to have far-reaching opportunities in Kansas, and so we have a few years to prepare. So I hope that some of this investment, additional investment, and we need to make that an additional investment in tourism, that we're looking at that. So thank you.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a good idea. We could do a driving tour of every place that I've received a speeding ticket in the state of Kansas. That would be lots of stuff. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a quick thing on the international division and some of the things you do, and I see it's highlighted, maybe opening up an office in Japan and doing some things. I would strongly encourage, and in talking with the Department of Agriculture as well, not speaking for them, but speaking as somebody that lives in the world of agriculture, would like to see some agriculture-focused trade missions. Mm-hmm. What I understand is that's going to be taken over by Commerce, and I see other states that do these, led by the governor, led by something, and things as simple as taking a beef roll on the plane with them to promote their state's beef production. what I see is, as we do trade missions, we bring 1 or 2 producers, a bunch of staff members, and we find out after the fact, instead of really touting the things that we do in agriculture production, because we are in the top 10 in many things. And so I would highly encourage some of that. While it's great that we did bring in the Panasonic plant, and the plant in Salina did expand some, but the rank and file everyday Kansas farm and rancher, I think, would benefit from that. And so I would highly encourage to work and encourage some of those dollars to go in as we look at agriculture trade promotion with those. Those in my career, I've been on several of those, reporting from them, and they seem to bring rewards more than just a short term. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions or comments before we move on to the next item on the agenda? All right, seeing none. Rachel, thank you for being here and giving us a briefing on the Economic Development Initiatives Fund. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's going to be an update from the Kansas Lottery. So I would invite Stephen Durrell, the Executive Director with the Kansas Lottery, to give us an update on the sports betting in the state of Kansas, as that went live in September of 2022, the lottery itself, and also the 4 state-owned casinos in the state of Kansas. So welcome to committee, Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be back in front of you all, some new faces this year. You do have my testimony in front of you. I will spare you the pain of me just reading it verbatim, so I will try to just hit highlights for you. Let's start with traditional lottery. Net sales for traditional lottery in fiscal year 2022 totaled almost $13 million, as compared to $326 million in fiscal year 2021. We were down a little bit last year, but it still represents the second highest ever sales for the lottery in a fiscal year. We were against the prior fiscal year against some really high Mega Millions and Powerball jackpots that kind of made it difficult to get back to that level. Obviously, jackpots are driven by other factors besides anything we can control. So those numbers, we've actually had some really good Powerball and Mega Millions jackpots in the last couple of months. So this year, it's going to be quite interesting to see where we finally end up. Instant ticket sales were about $207 million in fiscal year 2022, which is a decrease of about 5.2%. But again, there were a lot of factors that went into that. We had a little bit of an economic downturn. People were finding other things to do with their money, putting them in gas tanks and things such of that nature. But we have tried to combat that by doing other utilizations with our retailers to incentivize them on ticket sales. Things have been going extremely well through our vending machines, and those have been very helpful in that regard. And we're also doing some changes to how we dispense tickets to try and make that more manageable. Combined total ticket sales for all draw games in fiscal year 2022 was $106 million, which is down just slightly from $107 million in 2021. Again, those 2 large jackpots were the culprit. And we also then elevated sales from multi-state games in fiscal year 21 to 22. As well as a decrease in draw games through 2020. This is very similar to what's been going on in other states in the last fiscal year. In fiscal year 2022, the lottery paid out almost $192 million in prizes to lottery players, and commissions to retailers about $18.5 million. Cumulatively, since 1987, when the lottery opened, the net sales of over $7.1 billion, nearly $4 billion has gone back to players. $411 million has been paid to lottery retailers, and nearly $2 billion has been transferred. Over $2 billion has been transferred to the state. Let's see here. Vending machines. In fiscal year 2020, as you well remember, the lottery was finally allowed to put out vending machines, and we were able to pay for those out of cash on hand to avoid significant financing costs. To date, we have about 309 vending machines out in the world. And as you can tell by the numbers that we present, in fiscal year 2020, the machine sales were $6.4 million. Which was then, as you probably remember, a lot of machine sales go towards mental health. So in that first year, it was $1.7 million to mental health programs. In 2021, it was overall sales were 18.7, with 5.5 million going to mental health areas. Fiscal year 2022, was an increase to 24.8 million, and 7.4 million went to mental health. Currently, in this year, we are at 17.75 million, with 5 million already being transferred to mental health. We have an additional 70 machines ordered for from 2021 and 70 machines for 2022. All of those have been allocated for pay. We are in the current process of looking at, since we've had the machines out for a while, looking at the retailers that have them that might be underperforming, maybe transferring machines from between retailers to make sure that they are appropriately being used and utilized to their best potential. Transfers, as you were just hearing, transfers to the Economic Development Initiatives Fund in fiscal year 2022 was $42.4 million. Juvenile detention facilities got $2.49 million. Correctional Institutes Building Fund got almost $5 million. The Problem Gaming and Addictions Grant Fund got $80,000. That's a statutory number. They get more money from the casinos, so don't worry, they get plenty. Veterans programs get $1.2 million. Mental health programs got $7.4 million, and the State General Fund got $21.5 million. As shown above, the Veterans Affairs got $1.26 million. Which brings the total of about $22.5 million since the state passed legislation that some of the lottery money should go to veterans in 2003. Want to point out just briefly that additional monies were generated in $946,000 was generated in income taxes from prizes paid. Through the debt set-off program, we collected almost $334,000 through traditional lottery, and in a number that kind of tends to surprise people, the casinos collected $3.2 million in set-off money from prizes paid from casinos. I'll go through just real briefly some of the highlights that we've been doing. In the last year, our Play On program, which is our second chance and player loyalty program since 2017, has been extremely popular in fiscal year 2022. We have 250,000 plus Play On members, and more than 75 million tickets have been entered by Play On members into that Players Club program. Right now, we are in 2020. We were able to put a ticket checker function on our Play On program, which means that a player can check whether or not they have a winning ticket right there on their mobile device. And since then, we've had about 52.7 million tickets have been checked through the app. In fiscal year 2023, we just did our Holiday Millionaire raffle, which we sold out again, which we are glad to do. We did our live broadcast on January 4th, 2023, which we announced the winner, and that ticket has already been claimed. Interestingly enough, in the last the month of January, we gave away a Powerball winner of almost $93 million, and we gave away $3 million prizes. So 4 new, at least, millionaires created by the lottery in the last month. So that's a nice thing. Let's see here. We offered 44 new instant scratch tickets during fiscal year 2022. We continued our marketing with our marketing partnerships with the Chiefs, the Heartland Nationals, NASCAR, Kansas Speedway, and we've also continued to work with the Kansas State Fair, Country Stampede, and Riverfest. One of the things that we've been doing in the last several years is allocating money for marketing with our in-state universities, KU, K-State, and Wichita State. It's been extremely popular with our players and also obviously popular with the universities because we're able to spend our marketing dollars with them, which I think they always appreciate. Keep our money in-house, so to speak. Let's see now, fiscal year 2023 as of so far, the lottery instant game categories continue to perform well. $100 million through the first 6 months. We're down, it says 3-point-something% there, but we're almost dead even now in the last couple of months. We've managed to bring those numbers back up. Total draw games for the first 6 months of 2023 are currently at $76 million. Across all games year to date, the sales totals of $176 million, which is about $10.6 million more in the same period for last year. And we have transferred in the first 6 months of 2023, $43.4 million to the state. I'll wait for questions till the end. Casino revenue, jumping on to page 4. You can see that the total revenue generated by the casinos in fiscal year 2022 versus 2023, they were up about 1/3%. Some of the casinos are up overall. Hollywood and Kansas Crossing, Boot Hill was down slightly, and Kansas Star south of Wichita was down the most, about 4%. I won't go through the actual numbers for each individual casino. You can do those yourself. But through casino revenue fund transfers through fiscal year 2022, in fiscal year 2022, the state of Kansas transferred $88.2 million to the state from the casinos. Cumulatively through fiscal year 2022, that's about $880 million. Problem Gaming and Addictions Fund, they got $8 million in the last fiscal year. As I mentioned before, that's the bigger number. And they've gotten almost $80 million since the inception of the casinos. City and counties received $12 million last year and almost $120 million since the program began. I can go through each casino individually, but I will just sort of highlight that the Southeast Gaming Zone, the transfer was about $40 million. In the South Central Gaming Zone, the transfer was $162 million. I'm sorry, not transfer. The revenues, total revenues for the Southeast Gaming Zone were $40 million. The total gaming facility revenue for the Central Gaming Zone was $162 million. For the Northeast Gaming Zone, it was $149 million, and for the Southwest Gaming Zone, it was $49.6 million. Moving on to expanded gaming, i.e. sports wagering, which is something everyone obviously has an interest in. After the Senate bill was passed in the legislative session, the lottery, our friends at the Racing and Gaming Commission, and our casino partners all had the duty of trying to get sports wagering up and running. I have to give kudos to every one of those entities and others that were involved in the process. We managed to do that in a very, very, very short amount of time. We enacted the bill and were able to get it up by, as the chairman mentioned, the first part of September, because we were trying to get in to try to hit the football season. So we were able to get in the professional football season and then also the college football season to begin wagering. I won't go through how the wagers are calculated. You can read through that as we go through the process. Sports wagering revenues through December of 2022, settled wagers at the casinos for retail, which means that in the casinos themselves, they are operating sports wagering. Not all of them were from the very beginning, but they are all up and running now. Was about $33.6 million. Revenues were were about $3 million, and the state share was about $303,000. Mobile was obviously the bigger mover in that time period. They generated $685 million, $17.8 million in revenues, and the state share was 1.7. So the totals for revenue from sports wagering were $700 and almost $19 million. Since December, 20 million, or from September through December, from revenues were almost 21 million, and the state share was about 2 million. Sports wagering revenues are distributed by statute, as you well know. 90% of sports wagering revenues are paid to the facility manager, and 10% is returned to the state. The first $750,000 that goes to the state is designated for a newly created white-collar crime fund, which is decided, then after that, the rest is determined by a percentage. 2% goes to the Problem Gaming and Addictions Fund. 80% goes to the newly created Attracting Professional Sports Teams to Kansas Fund. And 18% goes to the State Gaming Revenues and State General Fund. So that is a very, 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 very quick rendition of what's been going on at the lottery in the last year. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Stephen. The first question that I have is you had mentioned that there were 280 vending machines in the state of Kansas. Is there an anticipation to have more distributed through the state?
We are basically hitting a plateau. I think that we're probably going to top out between 350 and 400, I think, is probably where we are. We're at 309 now. We still have some on order that we're getting in that are slowly kind of trickling in. It'll depend on, like I said, right now we're going through the process of seeing which retailers have underperformed having the machines that they already have. So those may be transferred to other retailers that are interested in them that we think might be doing a better job utilizing that advantage. But they really have been popular, and there are retailers that are really excited to have them. So,
And time frame?
probably within the next, I would say, fiscal year, we're probably going to top out at where we're going to end up, I think.
Okay, and I was just asking Representative Helgerson, because I've flown out of KCI recently, and I noticed that Missouri has vending machines in
They do.
KCI, and I was wondering if Eisenhower had vending machines for the lottery.
We have talked to them. We've talked to both Wichita and Manhattan about possibilities of having vending machines. It's kind of interesting the way that the Lottery Act is set up about who can be a retailer. We can't just pick up a machine and drop it somewhere. We usually have a lottery retailer that's nearby. So we have talked about doing it, and I think it's a good idea. Just a matter of trying to figure out under the statute we can do it effectively, and we just haven't gotten there yet, but we will.
All right, thank you. Now moving on to the revenues from the casinos. I'm noticing here on this graph that you have on page 4 that Boot Hill Casino and the Kansas Star Casino actually had a decline
Yes.
in revenue. What is the marketing campaign for the casinos in the respected 4 gaming zones?
They go through a very significant marketing campaign, and they talk with us about what they are planning to do with marketing. I think that those downturns can be attributed to a number of different factors. There was a new Oklahoma casino that opened out west that I think may have affected Dodge City initially. I think that they've been managing to recover very effectively since these numbers were created. Their marketing campaign, they have a great staff out there. They've done a really good job of trying to attract people back away from that. Anything that's new, people are very interested in. Kansas Star's issue is a little bit different in that they have a new casino that opened up that, as you probably are aware, the state is a part of a litigation on just in Park City that has definitely affected their revenue stream. They've done a really effective job of trying to combat that, but sometimes distance is an issue, and people just are preferring to go to where that's closer to them. They don't have the same amenities that Kansas Star does. They don't have as nice a facility as a Kansas Star does. But sometimes it's hard to fight that. And so I know Kansas Star has been working very diligently on that.
Well, I know when I'm back home and you watch the commercials, because I'm from the Wichita market,
of course,
is what we get out in central Kansas. And there seems to be a lot of commercials for the Oklahoma casinos, more so than what we see for the Kansas-owned casinos. And so I wondered if those two casinos had a declination in revenue because of the marketing campaign that Oklahoma is doing in the state of Kansas.
And I think if you were to ask them, and I think that this is probably true, the money that the Oklahoma casinos have to pay out is very different from what the Kansas casinos have to pay out. So what they have available for marketing and/or incentives to bring players in is much higher than what our casinos would have. And so there is a detriment there for them to try to be able to get out and advertise as much as I think they would like to. But I think that now, with the creation of the sports wagering package and that sort of thing, I do think that they are getting more people into the facility, which then increases their ability to have interest in playing other games while they're in the facility. It's pretty clear that that's been a very big bonus for them, as opposed to either the Park City Casino or those in Oklahoma. So we're hopeful that will hopefully continue raising them.
And you don't have to answer this, but I know the seasoned members of the committee will know that I've harped on this for many years. In regards to Hollywood, I was glad to see that they actually had an increase in revenue. However, I know Representative Curtis will probably agree or maybe disagree with me. I still wish they would build a hotel on that property.
Well, let me just say that you are not the only legislator to express such an interest. We get that question quite regularly. I know that they have talked about it. They've looked at feasibility studies. I know that there is a new hotel being built over there as a part of any number of occasions. So it becomes, there's a lot of hotels over there, but I understand certainly the interest and concern about having a hotel directly connected to the property. Absolutely.
So, and then moving on to the sports wagering bill that we had last year, and there was a provision in that bill in regards to the racetracks. And you have mentioned here that there was no significant inquiries regarding racetrack gaming facilities in 2022.
Correct.
Because we didn't have any. But in that bill, we had a provision in regards to what was classified as historic racing
Historic horse
machines.
racing, yes, sir.
And is there any update on that as far as a horse track race?
I think that's a question that's better directed, and I hate to pass the buck, but that is being handled by the Racing and Gaming Commission. We don't have anything to do with historic horse racing because it is a pari-mutuel type game. And so the folks that are interested in that, I know that they have accepted applications, particularly for Sedgwick County. I will also tell you that particular issue has been the subject of litigation from the Kansas Star Casino about whether or not historic horse racing machines are valid under the Expanded Lottery Act, or if there's a breach of the Expanded Lottery Act under those machines. So there's been a lot of things that have been going on, a lot of moving parts in that. So.
All right, I think I'm done with my questions. I just want to express again, I wish they would build a hotel at Hollywood Casino.
Yes, sir. I will pass that on as I do every year.
Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions. First, you mentioned these larger jackpots that seem to be more and more common. Is that not attributed to the changing in the algorithm that made the chances of winning even more preposterous than they already were?
No, it's not. It's not an algorithm change. For example, Powerball added an extra day of draw, and so we went from just Wednesdays and Saturdays to now we have a Monday draw. So that adds the churn, obviously, to the number of tickets that are sold on a weekly basis. That helps. There is there have been some changes in how Mega Millions operates as well. But the actual algorithm and the number of players that, the percentages of change, that really hasn't changed over the last several years. They did change about 4 or 5 years ago with the idea that there might be a $1 billion jackpot at some point in the future. Turns out that there were more than I think that they thought. We had 2 in the last 6 months alone. We had a $2 billion jackpot that was won by one individual in California. So somebody out there had life-changing history, family-changing wealth in a fell swoop. But the odds of the games haven't really changed. Now, there is some discussion about future changes in both of those games. Mega Millions is talking about potential changes that I'm not sure are public yet that might change the way that some of their percentages are, but nothing's been finalized yet.
All right. Last question.
You may.
Saturday is the drawing for the next Powerball. I was wondering if you wouldn't share the winning numbers with the committee.
Well, I would be happy to, but I don't think either one of us would enjoy spending time in Lansing. So.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Hoffman.
Yeah, it is $700 million, so maybe it wouldn't be as bad. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
On the sports wagering, I know that under the bill, the casinos were given the ability to go out of the casinos and like to retailers.
Marketing entities, yeah.
And to also, I think to VFWs, things like that.
Sports bars and restaurants and such, yes.
Are there any contracts that are being?
There are not. There are no marketing entities have been created since the inception of the bill. I think that we have not gotten really any serious inquiries about it. I'm not sure the casinos have either. The way that the marketing entities are defined in the bill, I will say this as gently as I can. If you have more than 3 readers of how the marketing entities are supposed to work, you're going to get 10 different interpretations of how it's supposed to finish up. And so finding in trying to define what is capable under that section of the bill has been a real challenge. But I know that we have gotten sort of pseudo interest in, hey, we might consider doing it. What are the parameters? And we're like, well, it's really run through the casinos. It's a marketing contract that you have to run through the casinos on, and that applies to any number of different entities. But we would certainly encourage folks that are interested in reach out, and we'll figure out a way if we can try to do it. And as you well know, also, the casinos are not obligated to enter into marketing agreements at all. It is a permissive thing. So if the casinos make a decision that they are not interested in it, and when we ask them, some are interested and some are less interested in it, just because of the economics of sports wagering and the margins are so thin. So
probably the sports bars need to probably get a little more aggressive if they really want it. They
Yeah,
probably
and-
get more aggressive to push those casinos.
Right, and I think that unfortunately what a lot of the sports bars and restaurants think are available, it's not like, if you read the bill, I think that maybe there were certain folks in the legislature that thought there were going to be kiosks that were going to be allowed in each individual sports bar and restaurant. That's not allowed. Those are only allowed under the bill particularly at Casey Sporting or at Speedway. Those are the only places that are allowed under the bill to have sort of the kiosks. And I'm not sure if that was sort of an oversight on the part of the draft, essentially, of the bill. But right now, what would happen is that a marketing entity could go in and say, I want to have a relationship with you, casino, to have sports wagering. It would have to be sort of a, we'll give you credit on our sports wagering apps, platforms. If somebody comes in and, stays for the game and, orders X number of dollars, they'll get game credit or something like that. So it's a little bit more complicated than I think anybody anticipated it was going to be. So I would like to encourage people to do it. It just is nobody's really grabbed the bull by the horns and went for it. So.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Kind of going on that question, I do have a local VFW that was actively looking at participating in that with Boot Hill, but it was cumbersome, and the idea was that they would have a kiosk in the VFW, which is an oversight when we drafted the bill. So
I think so.
We might need to have a correction on that. Representative Helgerson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, question I've asked before, has the governor renewed the contracts with all the casinos now?
2 of the 4 have been renewed.
Okay.
There have been since the last legislative session, mouth's dry, we have had no contract renewals.
Okay. Could you give us the dates of when they renew?
I can. I don't have it off the top of my head,
That's
but I
fine.
will get it for you.
Just provide that. It was suggested to me that I look at the New York Times article because I missed some of the things that went on with the sports betting discussion in the legislature. Who is the right party to give us recommendations about changes in the legislation? Does it come from the governor? Does it come from your office, legislators?
Well, I think that any number of those places could, give viable help to any sort of changes to legislation. I know that there are things in that bill that I've heard expressed from both the legislative branch and the executive branch and even the casinos and partners that we wish had been sort of a little bit more clearly defined. As we certainly well know that, sometimes the way a sausage is made, it doesn't exactly as the chair said. There are oversights in intention of what a bill may or may not be able to do. But certainly if anybody were to ask, we'd be happy to offer any sort of help that we could.
Representative Helgerson.
Do you have any suggestions? I'll highlight a couple things. First, the amount of money that's bet versus the amount of money that we receive. I know in your chart you have it listed in the article. It says that there were $350 million in bets this fall and $271,000 in taxes. Now, if that money had been placed in the casinos or in other places, we'd have a much better return.
True.
Just simply that. Also, I'm trying to find some way of charting or predicting that additional 300, whatever the casinos enhance sales in their casinos is actually to benefit of the state, not just benefit of the people that are doing the betting. Does that? I'm not sure that we're seeing an economic benefit to the casinos by having the gambling in the casinos. Does that make sense? The sports betting.
Stephen.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry, you lost me there for a minute, but I'm back on track. The sports wagering certainly was, I think, originally designed to be of an economic benefit to the state and to the casinos, obviously. I think that the casinos would argue that having sports wagering allows for more traffic in the casinos, which then increases the revenue of traditional casino-style games, which I think is true. The revenue difference between what the state receives and between the casinos, what they receive, that's a legislative decision, and that's the way the bill was drafted. So.
Okay, one final thing. The provision that was added in the last few hours about Johnson County having a sports facility and the money going there. Has there been, I can't remember, did the governor come up with a recommendation to put the money in the state general fund, or has there been any recommendation?
I don't know the answer to that, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I'd like to echo the chairman's statement. And maybe perhaps amend it just a little bit and say that I don't want to hear anything about violation of the Expanded Lottery Act from Hollywood until they build a hotel.
Understand.
Then we can talk.
I understand, sir.
All right, but in addition to that, tell me a story about the Kansas Crossing with their sports wagering revenue. BetMGM doesn't look like a great route to go based on this table. So what's going on there?
Well, one of the provisions in the act allowed, which was unusual, allowed for marketing and essentially trying to drive player traffic to be counted against revenue, essentially. So some of the sports platforms were very aggressive in the way that they were trying to attract business and or players and through their advertising or free play and that sort of thing. Some of the platforms were more aggressive than others and have more of a hurdle to get out from under. And I think that might be, in this particular case, that might be the issue.
All right, so their ad budget ate up all the revenue.
I would say that it's certainly, as a result, as at the time of this printing, yes, I think that they are now, everybody is getting above into the black. I think right now we're getting everybody back on track. So.
Only in government would that work.
It's been an interesting exercise to do, for sure.
Excellent, thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to quickly go over the Hollywood one about the hotel.
All right.
But the larger question is, do we have information that says the casinos that have the adjoining hotels or within the casino itself, do they have more participation and do they garner a higher revenue?
I think statistically, if you were to look at across the board, in other states and other things, I think that the answer to that would be yes. I mean, I can't give you an exact number at the top of my head, but I think that in past research in the history that we've seen, I think that is yes.
Okay.
So.
And it would seem like it would because you would have a longer participation
True.
and not worrying about the hour.
True. People aren't worried about getting home and that sort of thing.
All of that.
Yeah.
Okay. My second question, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Yes, you may.
Would be play on.
Yes.
I get very few questions from people about lottery. I mean, they either do it or they go to casinos. But they're a little confused with play on.
Okay.
And when I was reading this, I think I understand why. Players can submit all winning and non-winning tickets from draw or instant games to earn points.
Correct.
For drawings for cash and other prizes. So, all right. So I buy a lottery ticket and everything else, and most of the time I don't win.
Okay.
All right. But now if you're going to have play on it, maybe I can win with this non-winning ticket.
Right. You
But
get
now
points.
you say I have to earn points. So explain to me, do I get so many points before I go in? Or will all those tickets go in and we all have a chance?
Everybody has a chance in play on. If you buy a ticket and it's either a winner or non-winner, it depends on the game. Sometimes, usually it's every ticket that we sell. Sometimes it's only non-winners because just the way that the structure of the game is. But you go in, you have your Play On app, you scan the ticket, and it will give you a certain number of points for that ticket. We do run incentives on, sometimes we'll triple play for, okay, this ticket is worth for this month is 3 times the points it would have been last month, that sort of thing. Then we have contests by rule that we run. For example, we gave away trips to Kansas State's bowl game. Okay, that was a trip that we gave away through our Play On program, and players could then choose to use a certain number of points for each entry that they wanted to enter into. Let's say it was 100 points, and I have 1,000 points. I want to enter that contest 10 times. So that's what they would do. So everybody has the same equal chance, and It's just a matter of if people, we would really encourage people to use Play On, because if they play the lottery, then they have the chance to win other stuff, including cash and prizes. We give away really cool stuff through Play On. We give away lifetime hunting and fishing licenses. We give away a freezer full of Kansas beef, which would be extremely popular, which you'd be surprised how popular that was. We give away Chiefs suite tickets. We give away all kinds of stuff, trips. So yeah, it's part of the process. It's a lot of fun.
How much money is in that pot?
It's just part of the, typical part of our marketing strategy. It's part of what we do to encourage folks to continue to want to play.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So on that, can you give a definition of the power play?
I could, if you want I can't give you what the regulatory, what's in our rules definition of power play is.
Well, just for example,
it's if you buy the power play on, are you talking like the power play on Powerball? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Then if you buy the power play, then you are able to, whatever prize you win doubles, except for the jackpot. So if you get if you get five of the balls, but not the Powerball, and you win $1 million, you get $2 million. So it just doubles your prize.
Okay, because I tend to buy a Powerball ticket if the jackpot is more than 500 million.
I understand.
And
what would
and I'm always asked.
Yeah. While we're on that topic, what would take, this is a question because I'm going to do a little bit of marketing research here. We have questions that, initially when Powerball started, people started buying more tickets at the $100, $150, $200 million range. Now, as the jackpots have increased, people are like, well, I'm not going to start buying until $300 million, $400 million. Now it's $500 million. So to me, the starting jackpot of $20 million is, that's a pretty nice chunk of change. So, if you have an idea about what would encourage people to start playing at a lower level, please let us know, because you would probably.
That's the threshold I always use.
Yeah, that's
and,
well, see, there you go.
And so when I would go to the convenience store and they asked, do you want the power play option? And I said, well, what is it? And they said, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, well, then I'm not going to buy it. Because
Right.
if you don't know what it is.
It's so hard, especially at the convenience store level, because they have such a turnover in personnel. It's so hard to keep people understanding what it is. We've tried really hard to through our social media platforms explain what all this stuff is, and we try to educate players, but sometimes it just takes a lot.
Right. Well, I'm glad you explained what the power play option is. So
Yes, sir.
now I know what it is. Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think back 36 years ago when this whole thing was working its way through in the 86 legislative session to open up lottery, who would have ever thought it would have got to where it is? Couple questions. Sports wagering numbers, are they where you guessed? Are they much higher, or?
They're about where we thought they were going to be. I think that and I would encourage everybody to kind of realize this. The numbers right now look really good compared to where we thought they were going to be. We came in at the crux of where the sports wagering year, peaks. Right, we came in right at the beginning of the football season. So right now we've had pro football, college basketball, the NBA. And now we're already out of college football. We're out of the NFL. We're going to be out of the NFL soon. We're going to be out of college basketball by April. The NBA will be gone by May. And then what people wager on after that through the summer months is baseball and occasionally professional soccer. So the high value wagering opportunities are going to go down. So our numbers are going to go down through the course of the fiscal year. How much they're going to go down, I think we're going to wait and see. So we've had the really good numbers because we've had the stuff that everybody wants to wager on right now.
Representative Rogers.
Okay, thank you. But I mean, a fiscal year is a fiscal year. I mean, it's everything comes, and so I'm not necessarily. I'm not going to do a micro manage of every month, because obviously that's going to happen. The sports wagering, is that like is there a provision? Because what I remember, I thought we voted on is something completely different, because like the chairman, I thought part of that provision was some of these service organizations were going to have opportunities, and I mean, it just seems like almost everything we do here is we regret because it wasn't exactly what we thought. So,
Yeah.
so I guess that's the thing. I mean, much like, as we redo some of our agreements with the casinos, is the same thing with the sports wagering. So, because it looks like we're creating, whatever, a penny out of every $1,000 that goes in for this professional pickleball tournament that's going to be in Kansas City, whatever we're saving the money for.
Right.
Because I mean,
is your question, does the legislature have the ability to change where the revenue goes? That's a
Yes.
question that I certainly have gotten.
Well, the question is, I mean, to open this up and say, okay, the 80% of whatever that's going to this, quote, attract professional sports fund to Kansas.
Correct.
And it looks like to me, I don't want to compete with Jackson County, so it looks like pickleballs is left. Of course, I'm being facetious, but
Certainly.
I mean,
The legislature has the ability, any sort of
Anytime.
revenue, any revenue stream, there are prohibitions via contract what the state is allowed to change in our relationship with the casinos or the platforms for a certain designated amount of time. Where the money goes from where those entities create that or the lottery creates, that's all statutory. You guys can change where the money goes at any point.
I thought so. I wasn't exactly sure, but I thought, well,
Sure.
there may have been something in the fine print at the end, since I believe it started as a Senate bill, Mr. Chairman, so I think that's probably close to, no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, all right, well, thank you, and I'm probably the last person that watches a ball game simply for the enjoyment of the game. I have no idea how this whole thing works. You will not find an app of any of these things on my phone, so I will just wait till pickleball comes, and then I will wager on that. Thank you.
I certainly understand, and you are not alone in that, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd also kind of point out that we sweep funds all the time around here. So just because it goes into a fund doesn't mean it has to stay there. So, I'm not a pickleball fan, so we can sweep those funds. But my question is in the accounting, and you brought it up. You touched on it a little bit earlier, but some of these other states were very disappointed with how these apps have accounted for their losses and their advertising streams. One of them in particular, the one that has $0 here, when they give you the $200 free bet, they take that as a loss right away.
Correct.
And so I would suggest that our Department of Revenue kind of look into that, because that expires after a certain number of days. A lot of people don't get it, they don't wager it. And I think, there's some smoke and mirrors here that we need to look at for our casinos.
I think that, as we are in the first year of sort of the sports wagering world, I think that there's always the chance that everybody's trying to feel out what is supposed to be in the act and how it's supposed to work and everything of that nature. I don't think anything is being necessarily nefariously done by the casinos or the sports apps. I think that it just may be a process of what they think is any under business opportunity is permissible under the act, and they know that as time goes by, that the legislature certainly is capable of changing any of that. And so it's just right now, everybody's trying to figure out that, okay, it's working this way. Does it need to work that way? Or does it need to tweak? And of course, as things go through the process, tweaking will always be necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to circle back on this kiosk for retail locations throughout the state, like the VFW, sports bars, and things like that. So, to the best of your knowledge, as far as the contracts we have with the regional casinos, that is something that we can legislatively make some tweaks on, or are we going to wake up and we're going to hear it's the same thing that we have with the current casinos, that we're in a contractual obligation and we can't change it?
Well, I think that with regard to the marketing entities portion, since there are no contracts with any of the casinos or any of the state for any marketing entities at this point, I don't think there's an argument that a contractual prohibition would keep the legislature from changing something with that regard. No, I mean, but then once contracts are signed, then it gets a little bit dicier. But there's no contracts right now. So,
yeah, I just want to say a lot of the support in my community for this was because we had a sports bar that was extremely interested in having that in their location, VFW, et cetera.
Sure.
So you think there's some room there if we act early and quick, rather than we wait until some contracts are signed?
Well, I think that it becomes more difficult. Nothing is impossible, even after contracts are signed, and all of the the casinos are aware that that the state owns and operates all of the gaming in the state. We own the lottery, we own and operate the casino gaming at the casinos, and we own and operate the sports wagering. And they know that the whims of the legislature or the executive branch can change, and there may be casino contracts out there that might need tweaking, and they are aware that that might happen. It just becomes a little bit more difficult under certain circumstances, but with regard to the marketing entities at this point, there are no marketing entities that have contracted, at least as far as I know at this point, with any of the casinos or any of certainly not with the state. So if changes, were desired, sooner might be better than later. So, but that's a legislative decision. Sorry.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I just want to make sure to clarify that my understanding is that the contracts, though, for the sports wagering are like 5 years.
Correct.
So the 90-10% cannot be changed.
That is, correct. And there was a lot, I will tell you, there was a lot of back and forth with the casinos about the length of that contract. They were very forceful in the fact that they wanted them to be very much longer contracts, probably for just the situation that you described. But, they are for 5 years. And so any legislative changes on the percentages probably would have to be considered after that.
Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure that was
clear. Sure.
Now, the 10%, what we do with that 10% can be changed, but
correct.
The 90-10 can't be changed. So, thank you.
Yeah, there were to be frank, there were other opportunities for state revenue in that bill that came out at the last minute, and that's where the state's money was going to lie, and it didn't make it into the final version. So,
Representative Helgerson.
The renewal of those 5-year contracts, is it the governor does it without the consulting the legislature?
We haven't gotten there yet. I think that it's designed statutorily that it's the lottery that makes the decision on how those are exchanged or extended, yes.
So basically, whomever is in, the governor can move in ahead of time before the 5-year contract is up and sign a renewal that would start at after that first 5 years.
Theoretically, that is possible, sir.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you. I just noticed Representative Landwehr is not here, but one of the things I noticed, especially about the machines, that was something we proposed, and I'm looking at it. They were a little late in putting those machines in, but if we look at 20, 21, 22, going into 23, we've actually received for mental health over $20 million as a result of that. And part of it was to generate more money, so we did have more money for mental health. So I was really pleased when I was just looking through, and then we can look at the transfers to see, but they have done really well. They've gone from initially starting at $6.4 million to the first 6 months of 2023, $17.25 million. So we have done well, I think, in terms of the machines and mental health. I just wanted to comment on that.
And thank you, Representative. I'd like to add that, one of the frustrations, they could be even doing, the machines could be doing even better, frankly. I mean, one of the frustrations that our players have expressed is in other states, if you have, say, a winning ticket, let's say you have a $5 winning instant ticket, and you go up to the machine and you scan it, it will give you the option of either just saying, hey, you won, or do you want $5 in credit to buy 5 more tickets? Our machines, because the statute won't let it do that. And I think that was originally designed to try to prevent them from being like slot machines or something, but that hasn't been the case, and our players have expressed frustration. It's like, why do I have to take my winning ticket over to the counter to get my money because I just want to buy 10 more tickets anyway? So that's a legislative thing that's in the bill about the machines. So
Yeah, comment. That is interesting because that could increase more revenue.
And we're the only state that does that, by the way.
Yeah. And, the reason why I want to point out the mental health is because we know mental health is increasing in all 50 states and even outside. So I think there's something about how much money we put into mental health and reaching that, and not just the problem gaming money that we have, but designated for mental health. And the machines have lived up to what they proposed would happen for us. But you just said how we could increase more, but how do you make the player play that game?
Yeah, well, they don't have to, certainly. I mean, if they want to cash out and go home, we're certainly okay with that, too.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions for Mr. Durrell? All right, seeing none, thank you for being here. I'd be remiss if I didn't say again, I would love to have a hotel built at the Hollywood Casino.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And since we are over 500 million on Powerball, I will remind everyone it's 700 million for Saturday. So that should be in your price range. We look forward to seeing you. Hopefully, we'd love to give you all a big giant check. If you need anything else, please let us know. We're happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Stephen. All right, committee, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is a demonstration on the Kansas Legislative Research Department Budget Data Visualization Dashboard. So Eric Adell with the Kansas Legislative Research Department is going to be giving us that demonstration. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, good morning. My name is Eric Adell. I'm a research analyst with KLRD, and going to be giving you just a brief kind of introduction and demonstration to a budget tool that we released yesterday publicly. You should have 2 handouts in front of you. One is titled KLRD Budget Data Visualization Dashboard. And that just kind of gives an overview of what the tool is and what it does, and also gives some links and information for how to get help if you need it and that sort of thing. But maybe I'll just start there. There's a, if you look at that document, there is a link to the dashboard itself, and this is hosted on KLRD's website. So the easiest way to get there, let's see if we can fix this. The easiest way to get there would be to go to KLRD's homepage, and then there's this link here that says Interactive Dashboard for Budget Data Visualization, and that will take you there as well. You can get to KLRD's website through just a Google search or on the Legislature webpage. If you click on this Research tab at the top, at the bottom of the page that opens up, it gives the link to KLRD's website, and then you can find that link again. There's also a mobile version which has a link on there with a QR code, so you can get to that using the QR code by scanning it with your phone. And it basically opens up a limited version of the tool. And this is sort of, what this would look like on your phone when you open it up. And it allows you to select an agency to filter by at the top of that. But it has sort of more limited capabilities than the web version that we have. Okay, so just to give you a brief demonstration, if you'll take a look at the handout that has a kind of a reference to the page as it opens up. Just want to kind of highlight a couple of things. At the top, there's a dashboard menu bar, and this is sort of the main way that you would interact with kind of certain functions. There's a help tab that opens up a page that will give you the ability to see kind of how to use different functions of it, or if you're having problems, there's a section at the bottom that has troubleshooting. And as this continues and we get more feedback about what problems people are having, we'll be adding some information to that. But that help tab is going to be important. I'd also say that, as it says on ks.res at klrd.ks.gov, just for general questions about this. And this morning, as I kind of go through and show you some of the charts and things, I would just encourage you to refrain from asking me any specific budget questions. I'm not a fiscal analyst with KLRD, so those kinds of questions could be directed to someone on our fiscal team. But yeah, so something that I probably should have noted on that reference page is just this tab here that says quick filters. That's really important for being able to find specific information that you're looking for quickly. So if you want to go to a particular agency or a particular program by name, that will allow you to filter that way. And then also, additional filters that restrict the data that you view by like the state general fund or different kinds of features like that. But just so looking at the layout of this, I've got on that reference page sort of numbers for 4 different plots, 1A, 1B, and here I can show you, 2A and 2B. And the way this is laid out is that the 2 charts on the left, 1A and 1B, those are kind of give you overview information. So the top left, 1A, shows it by default. It shows the governor's budget recommendations for the current and budget years for the relevant session. So here we have 2023 and 2024, and then it has a comparison to the actuals from the prior year, actual expenditures. In each of these plots, you can change sort of how you're viewing the data. So if you wanted to compare the governor's budget with the 23 budget approved by last year's legislature, there's an option to do that. And then in that chart, any one of these points for a particular budget, if you select it, it will change what is viewed on the right side of the dashboard. So on the right side, you have a pie chart and bar plot with specific details for a particular budget version. So, I'm currently showing the fiscal year 2024 governor's budget. But if I were to click on the approved 23 version, you'd see the details for that one. This also allows you to view 10 years of prior actual expenditures. So if you wanted to see details for a particular budget year, you could click on that budget and that would show you those details. And then the plot on the bottom left sort of mirrors what is selected on top. So if you just are looking at the governor and actual expenditures on the bottom, you'll see the governor's budget for the current and budget fiscal years, and then the 10 prior years of actuals relative to that. If you change this to look at governor, agency, and actual, it would then include the agency budgets as well. But this again allows you to view sort of different types of information. So if you just wanted to look at, SGF versus all other funds for the past 10 years of actuals, you can compare that. Basically, all of the other charts, other than the overview, give just 10 years of actuals. So you could look at a comparison of expenditures for function of government for 10 years, and then there are kind of different ways of looking at that. And on the budget reference document, that's just highlighted that those are parameters to change the categories for the chart. Any one of these 4 charts, you can change kind of the categorization of information that you see. And then an important thing about the pie chart and the bar chart is that you can use those to interact with the rest of the data. So if you select education, for example, it will filter out everything in the rest of the dashboard to show only education expenditures. So, so the top left chart just shows the total, currently is showing the total for the governor's budget just for agencies that fall under the education function of government. And if you were to select human services, you'd see that. And then on the bottom, the bar chart, you could further filter by clicking on one of those. So now we're looking at human services expenditures on state operations. And so you can see that in the trend on the bottom left. Changing those parameters allows you to change how you filter as well. So if you were to have, major purpose in the pie chart and then expenditure category in the bar chart, you can see salaries and wages. This is for total state government, but you could just filter just salaries and wages and see that that's categorized as state operations. And then on, currently this version is looking at fiscal year 2018, but then you would just select a different budget version to see, like the governor's budget, what the recommended salaries and wages are for total government. And then, so you can use this in combination with those quick filters in this menu that I showed you. So if you just wanted to look at state general fund expenditures, you could select this option to restrict funding to the state general fund, and then look at the salaries and wages just for SGF expenditures that are recommended. And you can see how those have changed over time in the trend plot. And then, you can combine these with other filters. So you could look at a particular agency. So you would be looking at salaries and wages just for the Department of Education. So this shows SGF expenditures on, I think I lost the salaries and wages part, but this also on the bottom right, there's a quick filter for salaries and wages and other expenditure categories. So there's lots of different options that you can use to kind of filter down to the sort of level of budget detail that you want to view. And then, there's also an option to include or not include reappropriations. So if you happen to be looking at the approved budget from last from the prior session, there's an option to exclude or include reappropriations data, or to only view reappropriations data. So, so obviously there's a lot to this. There's also an option to view more details, and this just it adds a couple of additional plots that also allow you to filter in the same way. And so there's this sort of proportion map. You can filter by selecting one of those in the same way that you can filter by selecting something in the pie chart. So now we would only be looking at Department of Education expenditures in that way. And then a couple of more plots showing the trend information. This one shows the change over time, the percent change over time. And this one is a plot of the data points for the top two charts. So the total amount plotted against the change over time. And then on the bottom right, there's the ability to sort of build a custom table that allows you to change, what the columns are and how the rows are split up and subcategorized if you wanted to do that. for all of these, there's just the way that it works, there's the ability to download data from this. So you can actually, you can download an image of the entire dashboard, or you can download the data, or what's called a crosstab in this application. It's just basically, you can download it to an Excel file. But so you can do that for a particular chart or for the entire data set. We're really excited about this tool. We think it's a great way to make budget data more accessible to a lot of different people, and just to be able to see, for people to be able to interact with the budget data in a different way. And we intend to expand this beyond just expenditures data. Hopefully by next session, we'll have some revenue information that we're also including in this. But as I said, there's an email address that you can direct your emails to our office if you have any questions about it. We're happy to help out. If you find any problems with it, we're happy to try to address those. And also, if you have suggestions for things that you'd like to see in the future, we'd be happy to hear that as well. So I'll just kind of leave it at that and stand for any questions.
All right, for the sake of time, thank you for the demonstration, Eric. But for the sake of time, we're going to, if anybody has any questions, use the email address that Eric has expressed in his demonstration, because we are nearing the time frame for the Appropriations Committee. We are going to circle back to the request for bill introductions. Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to request a bill be introduced and accepted by this committee. It is RS 0749. It would authorize the affiliation of Northwest Kansas Technical College in Goodland, North Central Kansas Technical College in Beloit with Fort Hays State University.
There's a second by Representative Helgerson. All those in favor of the bill introduction say aye. Aye. Opposed? Bill is introduced. Any further bill introductions? Okay, so the next item is, obviously, you had some reports that were distributed to all the members of the Appropriations Committee. Those reports include the Midwest Stem Cell Therapy Center, the Kansas University Cancer Center, and the Department for Children and Families Juvenile Crisis Intervention. Committee, we will not have committee tomorrow, and we will not have committee on Monday. So starting on Tuesday, we will be starting with budget report outs. And actually, I believe Chairman Corbett is going to be starting with some of the budget report outs. So please make sure that you schedule accordingly between 9 and 11 so we can get through the budget report outs. And we need to have everybody here because we will be voting on the budget report outs. So please make sure that you have the time slot from 9 to 11 in the Appropriations Committee and not scheduling anything else. So until Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., we are adjourned.